enjoy my caramels. Please visit SeussCaramel.com to place your order and to see a listing of stores that carry our amazing caramels.
It's 9:06.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann, a leading expert in professional coaching, clinical hypnosis, and energy clearing. Lois is an award-winning author of Chronicles of Hope. She has decades of experience in advanced hypnosis techniques, has conducted highly effective success coaching programs that have helped clients discover ways to achieve success, empower themselves, their families, as well as holistic practitioners to expand their practices. Get ready to be empowered with your host, Lois Hermann.
Good morning and welcome to Inspiring Hope. I'm your host, Lois Hermann, and I'm here to inspire you with positive messages and celebrate everyday people who are making a difference in our world. When we focus our thoughts and energies on what we love to do, we create powerful shifts that cause us to be more positive and peaceful. As we lift our energy, we empower everyone around us. If we each do what we can to make small shifts in awareness from kindness to healthy habits and simple happiness, we create ripples of hope. Join us as catalysts for positive change for our families, our communities, and our world at large. I hope you're inspired by today's show. And today, I wonder, are you flying our flag of hope, independence, and freedom? Today is Flag Day. I found this interesting. On 7/14/1777, love all the sevens, seamstress Betsy Ross presented the flag that she was commissioned to create that represented our country's symbol of freedom, our union, and with a new, I didn't know this, it has a new constellation of stars, that's what they wanted, representing the first 13 stars. The first 13 stripes were the first states in the Union, and then each state that's added, a new flag was created, adding a new constellation. So we now have 50 stars representing the 50 states of our United States. So as an Army brat, I remember growing up on military bases, and the flag was honored with salutes by the military, was held in high regard with parades and gatherings, and often we could hear taps played at the end of the day as the flag lowered and was carefully folded for the night. It was an honor to be chosen to carry our grand old flag for any celebration. And we began each day with our hands held to our hearts as we said the Pledge of Allegiance together. Our fallen soldiers are shrouded by Old Glory for their ultimate sacrifice. So what's happened to that allegiance toward our country and each other? What if we could honor the memory of so many generations who've been persecuted in the name of conquest of power? What if we could release the anger, hate, and fear that is carried in our genetic memory, our genetic makeup? Then we would have the opportunity to live in the land our forefathers dreamed of, with freedom, peace, and equality for all. We indeed are all one. I want to know, do you know what it's like to take risks for what you believe in? Our students are graduating this month and are preparing to venture out in this world to establish their freedom, their new life. I have to say my heart goes out to our new grads this year because the COVID situation has caused them to embrace a different kind of ceremony and celebration. So do you remember leaving the comfort of your home to start out on your own? Did you stay close to home, or did you travel far and wide? So in Europe, the youth often take a year off of schooling to travel the world on their own with URL passes and staying in youth hostels before they start university to experience their independence. They see the sights and they sort of sow their own wild oats. Often in America, our youth go straight from high school to college, often spending their first year goofing off, wasting the expensive tuition, and just having a party. So reflecting on it, my own children had circumstances where their schooling was interrupted. My son with military service, my daughter with adventures in modeling in New York City. And as they entered college, they were ready to apply themselves to what they intended to do for successful careers. I have to say I'm ever proud of their resilience, their determination, and two amazingly successful young people, in spite of all of the challenges that they went through with me. So I want to just say to our listeners, you're listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann at WSMN 1590. And today, we have a very special new college grad who has dedicated her young life to helping humanity. From AmeriCorps to Bike and Build, Jillian McCalvey has courageously traveled the United States, gaining unbelievable experience while inspiring hope for so many. I am ever inspired by her gentle courage and palpable sweetness. Please help me welcome an amazing young woman, Jillian McCalvey. Jillian, are you there?
I am. Hi, Lois.
Good morning, Jillian. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for all you are doing. Congratulations on your new college graduation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, and you, I know that, you had an extra, what is it called, the stole, because you graduated summa cum laude, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
You really applied yourself.
Yeah, it was a challenging program, but I felt ready for it. I really enjoyed your introduction because that was a great way to set the stage for how I took my gap year and then transitioned into college feeling prepared.
Feeling like you knew what you wanted to do, and so that you could really prepare yourself, right? Because I remember, I know Jillian because I know and adore her mother. So I've been tangentially aware of Jillian's, her adventures, shall we say. And you didn't really know exactly what you wanted to do before you went on your gap year, did you?
No, I didn't. I think that's a decision a lot of juniors and seniors in high school face, is wondering what career path they want to go on, what next steps after high school. And so I was surrounded by what I felt like friends that knew exactly what they wanted to do, friends that were going right to college. And so I felt a little lost until I had an English teacher that one day in my junior year did a presentation on this program called AmeriCorps, which I had never heard of. But when I learned about the community service that you would do with it, the traveling, gaining these new experiences, it just seemed to kind of click as that's exactly what I want to do before I pursue any higher education. So he kind of helped guide me to choose the right program. And so I did one called AmeriCorps NCCC, which is one of many of their service programs. So I was put on a team of 12 people out at their Sacramento campus, and we did 4 different community service programs up and down the West Coast over that span of time.
Wow, and you had never really been away from home for an extended period of time before, had you?
No, I hadn't. And so many people were like, wow, you must be fearless doing something like that. But I always tell them, trust me, fear is there, you just have to do it anyway. And I definitely pushed myself out of my comfort zone and kind of entrusted all these strangers on the West Coast to, take care of me and trust that I was going to gain experience from that opportunity.
And it was an interesting process too. I remember as a young person, I wanted to go into the Peace Corps, but with the Peace Corps, you had to have a profession, and then they would send you to someplace where you would use your profession. But AmeriCorps is different. You don't have to have any skills. It's amazing the skills that you learned, but you went through an application process, correct?
Yes. Yep. It was very similar to some of the college application processes I went through, and it was all online, and you included like a statement of why you wanted to join. And then as long as you kind of hit all the marks, you were put into, from my understanding, kind of like a random selection. So as long as you qualified, then you're in a pool of candidates, and then you get selected.
And it was interesting, I remember that you didn't have much planning time. You were waiting to hear, and then it was like, boom, you heard, and like, okay, we got to go next week. Is that right?
Yes, yep. I was originally waitlisted, and in the spring, and the campus start date was October 14th, I believe, and I didn't find out until 6 days ahead of time that I was accepted. So I was, I had already decided to take a gap year. I was applying for jobs, preparing to kind of settle in here at home in Goffstown, and then it was like all of a sudden I was on an adventure.
And quite an adventure. You did some pretty interesting things. Can you tell us about the different projects that you worked on and the things you learned?
Yeah, sure. So what I really like about AmeriCorps is that communities request for teams of AmeriCorps members. So we're not going to communities saying this is what needs to be done. They're requesting us to help us on different projects. And when we arrive, we have no idea what we could be getting into. So we had projects in the areas of trail work was one of our first ones. So that was really interesting, and I got to go through some chainsaw training ahead of time. So I was 18 when I went out there and being taught how to disassemble and then put back together a chainsaw so I could go out there and safely do this trail work.
And if people were to look at you, you're like this very gentle soul. I just don't picture you with a chainsaw in hand. So that
I don't think I did either.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely very empowering to feel like capable of doing these really cool things. Then our next project, which was one of the most impactful for me, was doing free taxes for low-income families out in Seattle. So we went through a 2-day IRS tax training course, which is part of the VITA program, which stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. And so over the span of the whole tax season, January to April, we were out at different community sites all over the greater Seattle area doing taxes, which I never thought that I would be doing at that age.
Yeah, and you said you came back and you did your mom's taxes, right?
Yep, I did. I came back and I knew that I had this new skill that I wanted to use.
Yeah.
So I also found a local United Way, which did free taxes, and was able to volunteer for them for one tax season.
Nice.
As well.
I think that is something that all of our young people and old people need to be trained in, is how to do things like taxes and balance a checkbook. It's life skills are so important. So you learned some pretty hefty life skills on this AmeriCorps journey, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. I think these are important things that we need to learn ahead of time.
Yeah, I know my daughter did some online. She was enrolled in a private online high school for the last several years of her high school, and they gave her credit for life skills like buying a car. She had to investigate getting insurance and getting a loan and opening a bank account, and those were all part of her chosen curriculum, and it was valuable. Those are skills that, of course, she was able to apply to her everyday life. I'm not sure whether many high schools have a life skills class, but I think that would be a really valuable thing to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. That sounds like a really awesome program.
It was an awesome program, and she's now at a director level in Fidelity. So it,
Wow.
it helped her a lot to have those skills, so that when she did go off on her own, she was solid. She knew what she was doing. So it's a similar type of thing, that you have taken that time to really. As much as I adore your mother, you were able to kind of cut those apron strings a little bit and establish your independence and learn to be self-sufficient. And that's just fabulous. I just admire that you are out there helping people. I want to just interrupt and let people know that you're listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann. And today we're speaking with young Jillian McCalvey, a brand new college grad, about her adventures in her gap year and some other things that she has done. Do you know what, Jillian, we didn't tell people what you decided to do, what you graduated from college in.
Yeah, so I just got a bachelor's of science in occupational science from UNH, and I'll be pursuing a master's in occupational therapy come this fall.
That is so wonderful. Congratulations. I know and love several of my friends are occupational therapists. It's a wonderful foundation, and there's so many different ways to use that going forward. Fabulous. And so,
yeah, I think it's a really special profession. I think it's also one that not a lot of people know of, but I think it's a really great profession that takes into account the whole person and wants to find the things that are meaningful to them. And you can work in a variety of settings with older adults or children, helping to increase their independence and safety and very different life skills.
Exactly. It is all about retraining life skills for people who have had some sort of a debilitating injury or illness. So you've taken all of your skills at learning life skills, and you'll be applying them in your career, which I think is an interesting tie-in, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So tell us more. What else did you do with AmeriCorps? You did the trail work, and you did the taxes, helping people with taxes. What other adventures did you discover out west?
Yeah, we on one of our projects, we were in a small town in Nevada doing cement work, which is again another activity I never thought I would be involved in, but we were building a sidewalk in this town to connect their senior center with their downtown. So all of the 11 of us, all of our hours of labor was able to save the town thousands of dollars without having to hire outside services. And so that was really neat to know that physical labor would eventually be impacting people's real lives and what they could have access to in their community. And then our final project was in a town in Southern California, and we were doing a couple different things, but the main project was habitat restoration in this. Yeah, it was an old sand mine, or sand pit, essentially. And so we were out there planting desert plants every day. Some like prickly pear cactus, sagebrush, and yeah, that was our last one. So definitely a huge variety out there.
Yeah, and they're not the type of plants that survive very well up here in humid, moist, balmy New England either.
No.
Right?
No, and it was definitely hot. We were there in June and July
Ooh.
in Southern California.
Yeah, that's very hot. Yeah, and dry. So it's a very different type of heat than we have here in New England. So
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the whole concept. There were 11 of you that spent, 10 months together, is that right?
Yep, 11 of us. Yeah, so we lived and worked together each day. AmeriCorps covers our housing and food costs, and in addition to the service that we do with each of those projects, we each have to locate different service projects kind of in our off time. We also had to do an additional, I think it was 80 service hours with local organizations. And so we were, as a team, in charge of finding those additional service projects, and we each had a role on our team. So I was one of the fitness coordinators. So outside of our service projects, we had to do some physical training 3 times a week. So it's a very, very intensive program. You're occupied doing something either for the greater good or for improving yourself throughout that whole 10 months.
And I know you said that when you were there in Southern California, where it was 100 degrees, you were intense. You were, living and sleeping in tents and porta potties, and so it was not very luxurious, was it?
No, it definitely was a test for all of us. That was extremely hot. We found some rattlesnakes near our campsites a couple times. Definitely made me feel very appreciative when I came back home and had a bed to sleep in and all the clothes in my closet. It brought me to tears when I came back home because I just felt so grateful for everything that I had.
Yeah, you lived all that time out of just a single duffel, right? Mm-hmm. Just what you could carry on your back. Yeah. Living very simply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is also, also really opened my eyes and showed me that, I could go through this really impactful experience and only live off, what would fit in that duffel bag. And so I really tried to embody a more minimalistic lifestyle after coming home from that. And I remember getting rid of bags of things I felt like I didn't need anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, traveling light. Yeah, wonderful. And I have to ask you about the rattlesnakes because my husband grew up in Idaho, northern Idaho, on rattlesnake ranches. And so he talked about his mother would go out to work in her kitchen garden, which was rather large, and she would take the hoe and have to chase away rattlesnakes. And he used to actually make headbands from the rattlesnakes. He has lots of fabulous stories about rattlers. So tell us about your rattlesnake stories.
We had 3 different rattlesnakes that kind of snuck onto our campsite. I only got to see one of them, but I remember that going into it, I was so fearful of encountering any rattlesnakes. But once I saw that one, it was kind of hiding behind a rock, and we were all crowding around it. And he was just staying there, kind of looking at us like, what are you up to? And so in that moment, I was no longer afraid of rattlesnakes because I felt like he wasn't a threat to us. And so what we had to do was call the man that ran the property that we were on. And so he came and brought his big snake stick and kind of hooked up the rattlesnake and put him in a bucket and relocated him.
Yeah, so, from what I understand, the when you hear the rattle, that's basically a warning sign. Get away, get away. They're basically telling you, leave me alone. The rattle,
right.
the rattle, they're as much afraid of us as we are of them, and the rattle is there to say, go away.
Yeah.
So you faced a lot of fears in that journey. And what was your biggest takeaway from AmeriCorps?
My biggest takeaway was probably, the importance of connecting with people. I think that's one of my greatest takeaways because when we were doing taxes in Seattle, I remember working one-on-one with families. They could be single moms, they might be experiencing homelessness, and just really connecting with them and hearing their stories. And I remember feeling like that's what I want to do. I want to work one-on-one with people and really, come to an understanding with the people that you meet.
So would you recommend that other students investigate this, especially people who are not quite sure what they want to do when they get out of high school?
Absolutely. I am a big supporter of AmeriCorps, especially this program. I think it was very challenging, but it came at a really important time in my life, and I think that it could do the same for others that are just getting out of high school. I would also just suggest looking into a gap year in general for any high school students that aren't sure what they want their next steps to be, because it's okay not to follow the same path that a lot of your peers might be taking. And I think that's something that I wish I had known, right? I wish there was more of a conversation around taking a gap year and the other options that we have as students, that there are trade schools and certificate programs and community colleges, and that you can kind of find your own path after high school.
Exactly. And even military service for, just one tour. Right. The military, depending upon the program you're in, will oftentimes end up paying your college tuition then. So it is amazing the opportunities that are out there instead of being pressured to go to college immediately from high school, unless, like you said, there are some people who just know what they want to do and they go straight into college, and good for them. But there are others who are like, I have no idea. And it's great to have that, take that pause, that time to explore life, get some experience into what you might like to do, and see if that's the true fit. So good advice, Jillian. And you're listening to WSMN 1590. This is Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann, and I have a young friend on, Jillian McCalvey, a new college grad, who is telling us about her experiences as she's been out venturing in the world, helping humanity, even at her young age. And so, Jillian, the next adventure you went on was, tell us about this, Bike and Build.
Yeah, Bike and Build. So my AmeriCorps team leader actually did this program, and that's how I found out about it. So Bike and Build is a nonprofit organization that leads cross-country bike trips that bring awareness and raise money for the affordable housing crisis that we're experiencing in this country. So the trip that I chose to go on was the Central United States route, which was from Virginia Beach, Virginia, all the way to Seaside, Oregon. And it was a 2.5-month long trip. And along the way, we would stop and work with different affordable housing organizations, such as Habitat for Humanity was a common one that we encountered. And we would stop for a day and help to build these houses for families.
And of course, you had all kinds of experience going in. I mean, you were an avid biker before, right?
Yeah, not exactly.
Exactly.
You think, right?
Yeah.
You think, but no, that's a really important piece of this. Is I never was a big biker. I biked a little bit when I was little, but I knew nothing about road biking, and so. And they say that you can do this without being an avid biker. You just have to commit to training and learning about biking. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I frequently visited my local bike shop, and I made sure to do as much as I could to feel comfortable on the road before heading out.
You had to take a class on bike safety, and you had to learn how to change your own tire. It's not like, hey, Daddy, can you come fix my tire for me? You had to be able to do everything you're on your own, right?
Right. Yeah, they definitely did a lot of education safety, and I brought my mom to a local course. I think it was at an REI. They do courses about how to replace your tires if you have a flat tire on a bike. And what multi-tool I might need while riding. All that was new territory for me.
Again, so much learning. And then also you were in pretty good shape, but going in. But here you're biking how many miles a day on average, or how many hours a day?
It was on average about 65 to 70 miles a day.
Wow.
We had some days as low as 30, and then we had 5 days that were about 100 miles.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it really varied, and our wake-up time was typically 5 in the morning.
Whoa.
But, yeah, we did have one day that was 3:45, and that was specifically to beat the heat that day. We had 100 miles to bike.
Wow.
So it really varied.
And you told me, I remember pictures, and if you had to, your hind wheel, what is it called? The back wheel was in the Atlantic Ocean, right? That was the takeoff? Yep. You had to touch the back wheel in the Atlantic Ocean, and then the end of the journey through, what did you say, 12 states? And you touched your front tire in the Pacific Ocean. Isn't that cool?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the ritual. Yep.
Yeah, the celebration. So what states did you travel through?
So we went through, I'm going to do this without a map. We went through Virginia to Kentucky, hit the ends of Illinois and Indiana. We went through all of Missouri, all of Kansas, through Colorado, and we hit the Rocky Mountains and went up through Wyoming.
Wow, that had to be hard. You had to ride through the Rockies, so you've got some incline there. By then, you probably had some pretty powerful legs.
Yes, I would say that the Appalachian Mountains were the hardest.
Oh, really?
Because that's when we were still a little out of shape.
Yeah.
Out here on the East Coast. Yeah. By the time we got to the Rockies, we were feeling okay. and I think this is how I interpret it. The Rocky Mountains, they build the roads a little more through the mountains, whereas over the Appalachian, it was kind of like up and over.
Yeah.
That was a hard day. That was our third day in, was going up to the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it, the Blue Ridge Parkway? Because I moved up here from East Tennessee. Very familiar with the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. And you kind of, every day had new views.
Yes.
People that you met. I very much was taught to live in the present moment during that trip. Because it was so, every moment was so special and fleeting at the same time.
Yeah, and I interrupted you when you were talking about going to from Colorado through the Rocky Mountains. From there, you went through Colorado to Wyoming, and then what were your next states?
Then we went a little bit into Idaho, and then back into Montana, where we went all the way up to Missoula, and then back through the state of Idaho, which is beautiful out there. I never knew that Idaho was so forested and lovely. And then we went on the border of Oregon and Washington, right along the Columbia River there, and ultimately ended on the coast of Oregon.
Such an amazing journey. So you're biking the whole way, and of course you're staying at luxury hotels, right?
Again, I wish, right?
Right.
Nice.
You're mostly sleeping on floors, correct?
Yeah, we were given a little blow-up, single-person little blow-up mattress, but we are mostly staying at churches, churches, high schools, some YMCAs, and a couple times we were tenting. So kind of whoever would allow us to stay the night. And our trip leaders had actually planned that out ahead of time. So we were lucky enough to know exactly where we were going and staying each night.
And I loved what you talked about your food that you were blessed to receive because people fed you, right?
Yeah, yep. Our food was mostly donations, and from the churches that we encountered. We were just so blessed by their generosity, making us spaghetti dinners, warm meals. Sometimes they would even have extra food and granola bars that they wanted to take with us on our journey. So it wasn't without their kindness that we would have been able to make it.
So you experienced a lot of goodness as you traveled across the different states, the beauty of the different states, and the common goodness of people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I feel, is there's more good out there than there is negative. It's just the negative gets all the publicity. There are so many good people. And that's what you experienced, because you again, were traveling with what you could carry with you. You had very little.
Mm-hmm.
You had special shoes with cleats that locked into the pedals on your bike. But you were relying on people's generosity to carry you all the way across the country. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were so many people that were willing to not only provide for us, food and those type of resources, but also a lot of people that prayed for our safety. And no matter if we shared that religion with them, a lot of churches would ask to pray for us. And there was one moment that I believe we were in Missouri or Kentucky, and kind of in a very rural area, and a couple of us were on the side of the road taking a water break, snack break, and he came out of his local church and asked if he could pray for our safety. And I just remember that moment really blew me away, because it just felt so kind that he didn't even know who we were.
Right.
And yet he wanted to send us, some good energy on our trip.
Isn't that amazing? And then you're also, you met good people, and you're also doing good things. So we were talking about the biking, but you also would stop and help build houses. And you talked about, what was your first project that you stopped and built?
We were helping to install windows on that first one.
Now let's get this picture. You're what, 19 or 20, and you've installed many windows in your life before this, right?
Nope, that was my first one. I know, and they taught us how to do that, and that was in Charlottesville, Virginia. Mm-hmm. We were installing windows. Yep, and a lot of at our other build sites, we would be doing framing, painting. And sometimes the family would be there helping out, or just there to stop in to meet us. And that was incredibly inspiring to meet the family that was going to be living in the place that we were working on.
Yeah, and so in addition to knowing how to do concrete and taxes and chainsaw, you now know how to wield a hammer and install windows. You are a multi-talented young woman.
Thank you.
Yeah, what a lot of skills. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are listening, this is Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann. We're here every Sunday morning spotlighting a new and wonderful person. And today we're speaking with Jillian McCalvey, a future occupational therapist, who's telling us about her gap year and her journeys that she did to help inspiring herself and others through AmeriCorps, and Bike and Build was a whole nother journey. So tell us some more of the stories that you'd like to share. You talked about one of your interesting stories when you were in Kansas, when you were tenting.
Yeah, sure. So we had one night after a long day of biking, we were tenting in this field in Kansas. So we had our tent set up, and I believe we had just eaten dinner that night. And we're starting to realize that the weather was not going to be in our favor. And we were watching the dark clouds kind of roll in. And I'd never really experienced a Midwestern storm like that. I will say they are not like the ones around here. And I remember that all of a sudden this like huge gust of wind came and just like took out all of our tents. And then like instantly the rain was coming down, lots of lightning, and my team members were running and trying to get the tents, and we were shoving them under the trailers that we had. And then everyone's trying to scramble for dry safety, and so we all like crammed into our vans. We had 2 support vans and waited for the storm to pass. And after the storm went away, we realized that all of our tents had been completely destroyed. So we were a little bit worried, what are we going to do that night? And one of my teammates had actually attended church that night, and so he asked the pastor if he wouldn't mind if we stayed in this nearby church. And the pastor was extremely welcoming and allowed us all to sleep inside his church that night. But we were all still a little distraught over our destroyed tents, and what are we going to do like the next time that we're going to have to sleep outside. And so after staying with a very generous congregation in that town, we biked to Newton, Kansas, which remains in my heart one of like the most hospitable, generous locations we were. They actually assigned each member of the congregation was assigned a rider, and so they kind of read our bios and went up to each of us and like greeted us very personally, and that was so sweet. And it turns out one of the members' husbands worked for Coleman, and that next day he provided us with 5 brand new tents, which just blew all of our minds.
Wow.
We couldn't believe that.
Wow, talk about generosity. And what a surprise. Prayers answered, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So you have seen Mother Nature at her best and some of her worst. And you've seen mostly people that have been gloriously welcoming and kind, which is amazing. And what do you feel is one of your biggest takeaways from your bike and build journey? What was your biggest lesson or memory?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is just, I would say, the generosity of the people that we met all across the country, because we couldn't have done it without the help of so many different individuals and communities from Virginia to Oregon. And it was just amazing to be kind of supported every day of our bike trips by the people we met. That was really incredible. And I think, like you said, most people are good, and this was just such a big awakening of that for me.
Yeah, and it took a bit of courage to get out there and travel the world on a bike. Yeah, that's just amazing. So,
thank you.
Hats off to you, Miss Jillian. So you are inspiring, but I want to know who has inspired you in your past and now. Who has been your inspiration?
Yeah, well, my mind immediately goes to my mom, and I think that you, having met her, probably understand exactly why I would feel that way. Yes. She's just one of the most positive people that I've ever met, and she's always smiling, always making people feel cared about and welcomed, and says very kind things for everyone that she meets. She's very thoughtful. And even for the living creatures, she's the one that is going to be rescuing the spider that you find in the corner of the room.
Oh, yes. Yeah, she and St. Francis, they're definitely kindred spirits.
Yeah.
And and she does a lot. She was the first person on the show, so you can listen to Denise on our YouTube channel, Lois Hermann. Go to the Lois Hermann website, and you can link over to the YouTube channel. And Denise McCalvey was the first guest on my show. She was courageous enough to be the first, and she just does so many wonderful things. She has a golden heart, an amazing spirit. Yeah. So, yeah, I adore your mom. And you also talked about your grandpa.
Yeah, so my grandpa, he's part of the reason why I chose to pursue occupational therapy. But my grandpa, he got in a car accident years ago now, and he was on a very long road to recovery where he received a lot of OT and PT and speech services. And what was amazing to me, I was young when his accident happened, but he always kept his sense of humor. He always had his personality. He was always joking, and he went through this really grueling physical recovery without hardly a complaint. He always, I think that's where my mom gets her positive demeanor and love for other people is from my grandpa.
Yeah.
Because he was always such a special person.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful that you have those inspirational people in your life. All it takes is one person to light your world, and it gives you opportunities. It gives you the opportunity to see the potential for good. So, what would you suggest to others to stay upbeat and inspired, especially in this crazy world we're living in right now? What would you suggest to people to stay upbeat?
I would suggest that focusing, kind of like what your show is doing for people right now, and that's focusing on the good, focusing on the hope, and recognizing that we have control of a lot of what we consume on social media and through the news, and making sure to balance out keeping yourself informed with also making sure to see the good that's going on in the world as well. And one way that I feel that I like to reset is by going outside and hiking and walking my dog, because I find that it's really hard to be upset when you're outside. It's a really great way to get recharged.
I agree. I've been out working in my gardens and just sitting down and looking at all of the beauty, regardless of the fact that there's a labor, but it's a labor of love, and it's just being in the energy of the gardens and of walking the trails and just being in nature just is a reset. There is an energy there that helps us to shift, especially when people are empaths, and I know that you tend to be very empathic. So when you've got so much, you're taking on so much from other people and you're very sensitive, it's really important to shift that energy to focus on the good and on nature. I think that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I love your dog's name, by the way.
Norman.
Well, tell us. And Norman came to you. He's a different type of a therapy dog, isn't he? He's one of the sweetest dogs I've ever known or met.
Oh my God.
So, what is it? What kind of therapy did Norman do? Tell us a little bit about Norman.
Norman was trained to be a therapy dog for an individual that had PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So he is trained to kind of lean into you as a form of comfort.
Yeah.
I think, and he was also taught that when someone would be having nightmares, that he would hop up on the bed and lean into you.
Right.
And I think everyone that meets Norman just feels a little bit more calm because he's has such a gentle demeanor about him.
He is so mellow. He really is.
So
And yeah,
mellow.
they actually, this type of they're trained to sense the elevation in heart rate for anxiety. And I don't know whether it's through a smell that we get off that they pick up, or for whatever reason they can sense when they talk about an empath. He is a total empath. He can sense when there's some anxiety going on. I just love it. I had never heard about that kind of a dog before Norman, and then I had a client who had military PTSD, and he had a wonderful big old black lab that was a therapy dog like that as well, and they're just amazing, just amazing.
Mm-hmm. You're very lucky.
Yes, yeah. So, do you have any thoughts to share on Chronicles of Hope? I know that your mom has been very involved with the story and the reading of it, and have you read it yourself?
So I just started listening to the audiobook recently, now that I don't have to be doing homework and reading my textbooks. I have some free time this summer. But I know that you and the whole Hope team are doing amazing work with these books. And just from the few chapters that I've listened to, I think for me, it's good to take those moments to kind of digest all this really important information that's being shared. But from what I'm getting so far, it seems like it will be especially important for my generation to listen to the information on even the climate crisis and what it talks about. I think that's definitely important to hear.
And those first few chapters in the first book are all about negative energies and how we can shift the negative energies and how we need to shift the negative energy. And we're seeing this explosion of negative energy right now. And, helping people to shift that negative energy is so important, to stay the positive, to send positive energy to these people who are in crisis, and to shine the light of hope, that they can help heal through this, because a lot of this is generational memory that they're dealing with, and as they heal themselves, they heal generations from the past and into the future. And it's important to shift our energy to be more positive, which is what you have experienced on your journeys. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for the work you're doing and are going to continue to do as an occupational therapist. Do you have any a passion for where you're going with when you get your new degree, your master's?
Yeah, as of right now, I think I'd like to work with the geriatric population, maybe in skilled nursing or assisted living. I've always kind of had a passion for working with that population.
Like your grandfather, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, from my grandfather.
Yes.
And but it's such there's so many different settings with this type of career, so I'm excited to see where I do end up.
Yeah, me too, because of the holistic path that you and your mother are on as well. It'll be interesting to see where you end up. So thank you so very much. Jillian, do you have a favorite quote that you'd like to end the show with?
Yeah, sure. One of my favorite quotes is by Helen Keller, and it is, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much."
That is so appropriate. We are all connected. So thank you so very much, Jillian. Thank you for listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann at WSMN 1590. Tune in next week for another inspiring person. And next week is Father's Day. So we're going to have a very special Justin Etling from his show that is on Wednesdays, and also the show that's just before this one. He's going to be on, and he's a brand new papa. So be here with us next week. Meanwhile, thank you again, Jillian. Thank you, listeners. Take the week, look up, stay positive, and be the light in someone's day. Take care.
WSMN 1590, Nashua's source for news and talk.